Welcome back, everybody. We're with Ingar Grev of the DC Growth Coach, who is a graduate of the Naval Academy and has a certain niche in his business on leadership. Ingar, let's go into some of those ideas that you have about leadership and you've written about.
You got it, Kip. So let me start off with the most important idea here, and this is actually, just for what it's worth, this is coming together into a book. So
cool.
I wish I could tell you who's going to be publishing it so far. I am talking to a publisher.
Good.
But well, it's coming into it. But as I was putting together these ideas into an overarching idea, it was the following. That, one of the things is that as a Naval Academy graduate, people can look at me and say, well, Ingar, it's easier for you to talk about this stuff because you did all the things that are appropriate for being a leader. And I recognize that. However, if a small business owner or a business owner of any size or a leader of any size organization is running an organization, he or she is there because they had some kind of inherent leadership ability, period.
Gotcha.
You started a business, you got some leadership ability.
Gotcha.
Moreover, I challenge anybody who's listening to this right now to think about, just name me one great SEAL. Name me one.
Can't.
So, and that's the problem here is that, it doesn't take a George Washington or a Douglas MacArthur to run an effective organization. It doesn't require that.
Ingar, I've heard that. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I've heard that. I think in the book Good to Great with Jim Collins' book, I think he says the best leaders and the best companies are the guys that you really never heard of. That's right. They adjust the bigger companies, at least that Jim Collins wrote about, were companies where you would never have heard of the presidents.
That's right. Being a leader means that there are some tough decisions that you're going to have to make in terms of investment or who to hire, who to fire, and so forth. And so, with that in mind, I'll kind of dig into some of these ideas we have here, and I'll actually walk you through how I came up with this.
Okay.
So I started off with this idea that, so there are four concepts that came up in my first series of articles: teamwork being paramount, training, innovation, and failure is an option. What that means, first, the teamwork is paramount. The idea is that with SEALs, teamwork is everything. If you are not a team player, you are not going to be on the SEALs.
That's everything.
Period.
I can understand that. Yep.
And where this is important in a company is where it's necessary for a team to operate together in order to accomplish something. Not all positions require teamwork, at least not as the number one skill.
Sure.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's a pretty successful sales manager, and he said for him, teamwork is probably about number 3 on the list. It's very important, but it's number 3 on the list. So teamwork is absolutely paramount. And if you're going to put people onto a team, you got to make darn sure that those people are team players. If they're not, they shouldn't be on your team. This is if you're going to be a high performance team.
Gotcha.
Training. SEALs do not stop training at BUD/S, at their basic school. They keep going all the way throughout their entire career with the SEALs. And the same thing goes with the entire military. We used to joke around that the mission of the peacetime Navy was training. Train, 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 train. The idea there is to constantly hone your competitive advantage vis-a-vis your competition. Because one thing's for darn sure, it doesn't even matter if you're in the military or not, but they're out there somewhere is some competitor who is trying to work to get that competitive edge over your customers, because your best customers are their best prospects. So that's the whole idea about training is to make sure that your people stand out when compared with the entire industry, and make sure they continue to be competent performers in delivering your products and services.
Okay, Ingar, what do we say to our small business owners who are listening to the program today, and the people who want to start a small business? What do they train on? What's the process? Do they if they have salespeople, that's constant training, which rarely happens in today's world. What do they train on? How do you certify them?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's going to go beyond the scope of I haven't dug in deep in terms of what are some items here. That's going to be a follow-on article. But I can tell you right at the top, there are a number of items. One of them clearly is, this whole topic we're talking about is leadership.
Yes.
If you're going to have people leading your company, if you're going to have people leading teams of more than 3 or 4 people, you had better make sure that they actually have the tools to be effective leaders. Leadership is everything to a company. If you aren't at least sending them to some kind of course at the local community college or somewhere to get them some kind of leadership 101, again, easy concepts like being friendly but not friends, the idea of management by walking around, actually walking around the facility and seeing how things are going, saying thank you and saying please and treating people with the golden rule. These concepts, as all they may sound trivial to you and me, are simply not understood across the board by business leaders. It's amazing how many times I bring these up in workshops and people write them down furiously in their notes. Like, dude, you run a company. How can you not know that? And so you absolutely have got to train your leaders, because your leaders, if they aren't actually leading, you're going to have employee turnover, you're going to have poor productivity, you're going to have all kinds of problems. And I believe everything falls from that then. So you talked about sales training. Clearly, sales is a process and it's a skill. And you can train that process and skill. And if your salespeople don't even have the rudimentary sales tools, then how are they going to be effective in their jobs? Help them go out there and actually close deals through the questioning process and so forth. Clearly, continuing training with IT, right? If you're any kind of technology industry, keeping your people up to date on what's going on in the latest technology. Accountants need to get, it's part of their process to keep their CPA certification, right?
Yes.
Is their continuing education credits.
Doctors
So it's
have to
across
do
the
the same
board.
thing.
The idea is any kind of service product service you're providing that is a constantly growing or changing industry, you need to constantly get trained on that, even if it's not required by a governing body.
You said earlier, and I'm going to quote you, leadership in business is everything. And if I have any takeaway from what we've talked about, and there'll probably be several, that's it. Leadership in business is everything. Learn
Absolutely.
it. Learn how to lead, and everything will fall into place.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about innovation. We don't have a lot of time left, but let's talk about innovation.
So innovation is the idea that so many companies don't invest here. The idea about innovation is even if you were a dry cleaning business or you're give me the most trivial company out there in terms of what you think they may be, a landscaper. Innovation is the thing that's going to allow you to get a huge competitive advantage.
There you go.
To learn a new way to do something, a more efficient way to do something, maybe even a industry breaker, something that completely transforms the entire industry, like Apple, right, with their iPads or iPods. But in order for you to have innovation, you've got to invest in it. You can't just let it be ad hoc and say, well, I hope one of our guys sleeping at bed one night comes up with a great idea.
That probably isn't going to work too well.
Yeah, that's ad hoc, and that's not how you are an innovation company. You have to invest in it, which means that you take some time out of your direct labor. If you're in a consulting service, something like that, you take some time out, and you actually spend time on thinking about new ways to do your business, create work groups, focus groups, whatever it takes. And you can do this in marketing as well. You have to keep looking at new ways of doing things, and you have to invest in it.
Gotcha.
Simply, you just can't let it be ad hoc.
Okay.
You can't expect your people to say, hey, I know I want you to work 40 hours a week, but I want you to work an extra 10 to give me innovation. No, it doesn't work that way.
No.
Yes. You got to give them time out of their 40 hours a week in order to be able to help you come up with innovation.
Cool. How about, I love failure is an option.
Yeah. So the whole idea here is that, especially you see this in the military, you see this in any larger organizations, you see this idea of zero defects.
Yes.
God forbid if something goes wrong,
yes.
right? In the military, if something goes wrong, you're going to be all the newspapers and your career is over,
yes.
right? And in any large company, if you do anything that could potentially hurt the company in some way or hurt the bottom line in some way, it's over for you. And that whole idea is something that does not exist with an entrepreneur. I mean, you're going to have to take risks. You're going to have to fail. And if you don't fail, you're not going to find the new best way to do something. And the whole idea here is the SEALs knew going out after Osama bin Laden that they were going to have an accident. Well, they planned on the idea that something was going to go wrong. And sure enough, they lost one of the helicopters.
Yes.
Right? I mean, the thing is that they didn't roll over and wet themselves because they lost the helicopters. They took action, solved the problem, and moved on.
Cool.
And I don't think anybody got fired for that. I mean, the whole idea is we have to allow failure to occur. Now, on the same lines, we have to make sure as leaders that we don't give them enough rope so that they can destroy the entire company.
There
right?
you go. There you go.
But
yeah.
you do need to provide them enough room to allow them to fail and not allow failure to be the end of their career.
Ingar, you're great. I hate these words. Our time's up. Ingar Grev, the DCGrowthCoach.com. Ingar,